Philip Allen. Philip Allen. Thank you, Philip. Question. What are your thoughts on the student loan debt? And is it a problem or just a part of the cost of going to college?
No, it's a real problem. I'm going to meddle here for a minute, so I'm going to risk getting myself in trouble with the administrators, the faculty, and the students all simultaneously. My favorite model is the College of the Ozarks. College of the Ozarks in southern Missouri is the 5th most selective college in the United States. Ranks right after Columbia University. You cannot apply there unless you need student aid. They have no student aid. You work 15 hours a week during the school year plus 2 40-hour weeks. That pays for tuition and books. You work 40 hours a week during the summer. That pays for room and board. 92% of the students graduate owing nothing. 8% graduating owing an average of $5,000 because they bought a car their senior year. They do real work. They have virtually no clerks that are permanent. When they built a library recently, the general contractor hired students to do the library work. And they built an entire building. They run 2 for-profit operations. One is makes fruitcake for Christmas, and the other makes Tiffany-style glassware, the pretty stained glass things, and sells them. And so students can work on those 2 things. They are very frugal. By contrast, we've been through a cycle where for the last 5 years, public universities have gone up in cost faster every single year for 5 years than private universities. Now, what I'm going to say really is meddling, and I know that. I'm a former faculty member. And by the way, I got a student fellowship and a student loan. And so I've been through part of this. Calista had to pay off a student loan. I think both my daughters had to pay off student loans. We get it. But we've gotten into a totally different cycle where kids borrow too much, stay too long, and basically are told, don't worry about it. And then one morning they graduate and they're shocked at the amount they owe. And we really need to rethink this. Because what's happened is government has made it easier to raise cost. Universities have done the natural thing, which is raise cost. Faculty love it, because then they can demand higher salaries and fewer hours. And I think it's estimated that in 2014 there will be 1 clerical position for every teaching position. So you have this explosion of cost. And if you go say to students, you know, you could live much less expensively, go look at the dorms your parents lived in. They would regard this as being like suggesting you go to Siberia. So part of what we have to come to grips with, we as a people have got to come to grips with, you want to live well and you're going to borrow a lot, you're going to have to pay it back. I mean, the president recently was totally irresponsible. He went on and he said, I'm going to enable you to not have to pay back all of your loan. Well, that's fine, so who's going to pay it back? Oh, the taxpayers. Well, who are the students going to be 10 years from now when he's relieving them of their loan? Oh, they're going to be the taxpayers. So the president's basically saying to them, I'm going to charge you as a taxpayer for the gift I just gave you, plus the compound interest the Chinese are going to charge us.
Victoria Doyle. Victoria, thank you. Given your belief in energy independence, what would you do about the EPA, the radical environmentalists, for instance, and their opposition to the pipeline, to the Canadian?
That's a great question. You know, I taught environmental studies at West Georgia College, and I was the coordinator, in fact, of an interdisciplinary program. And I loved the natural world. I wanted to be either a vertebrate paleontologist or a zoo director when I was a kid. And so I really loved nature. And when I taught environmental studies in 1971-72, the Cuyahoga River caught fire in downtown Cleveland. Now, I want to suggest to you, I don't care how conservative you are, if you have rivers polluted enough that they're catching fire, there's a problem. The fact is, because of overuse of DDT, we were literally wiping out the bald eagle. These are just facts. There's a very famous case involving DDT. I favor, by the way, the use of DDT and highly targeted ways to go after mosquitoes in places in Africa where they're killing people, because it's less risky to use DDT than almost anything else to kill the mosquitoes. And malaria is the largest single killer in the world. If you're in a poor country, it's a terrible, terrible disease. But, so there's a middle ground here. There's a common sense ground here. I'm for the environment. I wrote a book with Terry Maple called Contract with the Earth, which was a conservative, innovative, pro-science, entrepreneurial, solution-oriented environmentalism. Now we come to the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a collection of radicals who have self-selected to impose their will on the economy with zero concern for jobs, zero concern for cost, and frankly, zero concern for sound science. These people are left-wingers trying to use the power of government to reshape the whole economy on their terms. I don't think you can fix it. So my proposal is that we replace the Environmental Protection Agency, let all of them go home, they can teach, they can write memoirs. And I would create an Environmental Solutions Agency in which the first ground rule had to be common sense. If you didn't have common sense, we wouldn't hire you. And I'm just going to give you one quick example so you understand how real this is. The Environmental Protection Agency was using a provision of the Clean Air Act, which involves, quote, particulate matter. Now, originally that was written to mean things like soot coming up, coal dust coming up out of a furnace at a large electric generating plant. But over the years, as the bureaucracy's grown more and more left-wing, it has come to mean dust. And so they were looking at dust regulations for agriculture. Now, I was two places recently discussing dust. The first was Iowa, where the farmers were pointing out that most of the farm roads that are out in the cornfields are dirt. And you don't normally plow in the rain for obvious reasons, so you normally plow when it's dry. So if you drive down a dirt road in a pickup truck, the odds are reasonably high that the stuff coming up behind you is called dust. And the EPA was looking at whether or not we needed a regulation which said, if the wind is too high and is going to blow dust from your plowing out of your field into the field next to you, you shouldn't plow that day. Now the farmers were all going, let me get this straight. It's all the same Iowa dirt. The guy next to me is growing corn or soybeans, and they don't care if my dust arrives. And next week when he plows, if the wind's coming the other way, I will get his dirt. And we've been doing this for over 100 years, and so far, none of the dirt seems to have gone very far. And you have these people from the EPA going, you don't understand. This is particulate matter. Here it is on page whatever of the Clean Air Act. So I left there. I was down in Arizona, and I was explaining this. And the Arizona farmers I was explaining to said, you don't understand. Arizona is a desert. We get natural dust storms. The EPA came out here and said to us, have you considered watering down the dirt? And we were explaining to them, the reason this is called a desert is we don't have a lot of water. Now, that's why I said the first requirement for a new Environmental Solutions Agency would be, if you don't have common sense, don't apply here. And then we build from that point. I just said to Tim, I don't make these things up. I just collect them as I go around the country.
Newt, I'll tell you, what we've been calling that is fugitive dust.
There you go.
It's a fugitive on somebody's property. Kyle Bergman? Kyle? Oh, thank you, Kyle. How are you? Good to see you up there. God bless you. Kyle has a question on waterboarding. What is your stance on waterboarding and other forms of interrogation?
Waterboarding is, by every technical rule, not torture. Waterboarding is actually something... Waterboarding is actually something we have done with our own pilots in order to get them used to the idea of what interrogation is like. I'm not saying it's not bad, and it's not difficult, and it's not frightening. I'm just saying under the normal rules internationally, it's not torture. I think the right balance is to say that a prisoner could only be waterboarded at the direction of the president in a circumstance where the information was of such great importance that we thought it was worth the risk of doing it. And I do that, frankly, only out of concern for world opinion. But I do think we do not want to become known as a country that capriciously mistreats human beings. But we also want to recognize if you had somebody show up who you thought knew where a nuclear weapon was in a city that you lived in, you'd be prepared to go to fairly strong measures in order to find the bomb before it goes off. And we ought to be honest about the fact we are not going to be intimidated against defending the United States of America by the ACLU and a handful of people